did not mean to hit it that hard. That's a pretty good way to start things off because things are popping off. Normally, I don't like to do what I call the webcam video, but honestly, as I was preparing today's upload, I realized I was going to be reading straight verbatim from one article, and I was like, let's just keep this nice and casual. I tend to overthink the production of my videos, so if y'all don't care about this, sometimes we will do this. Let me know down below. Today, the reason why I kicked the door wide open is we're talking about how things are getting a little bit heated between Microsoft and Sony. I danced back and forth on whether or not I wanted to make this video. The reason for that is because we're quite literally talking about console wars, not like communities battling against each other in a war between pieces of plastic. We're talking about the two biggest platform holders outside of Nintendo battling back and forth over Activision and really trading blows here. It's a story that dates back a couple of days ago when I made an Xbox news update over it, and my has it blown up over the last couple of days. So I'd like to just make a whole video talking about what's going on in the latest update with it, where Microsoft has really gone for PlayStation's throat in a 27-page document. With that, ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here, you're into Xbox news and information, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. So a little bit of backstory on this. I'm on a reset era right now. This is where things began, because what's happening right now is the Brazil regulatory body is reviewing the case for whether or not it'll be okay for Microsoft to acquire Activision Blizzard King. And so a variety of companies are submitting their opinions on the matter. So you'll see as we scroll down here, Warner Bros, Ubisoft, not sure who Nuvem is. It says they're a digital game store for PC, Mac, Linux from Latin America. Okay. Bandai Namco, Apple, Riot, so on and so forth. Everyone was pretty much not against this at all. The only one who's been contentious about things, understandably so, because they stand the most to lose, is Sony. And so when we had last spoke about this in my prior Xbox news update, PlayStation was claiming that what was happening was they would effectively lose out on a big portion of the market, so big that people would start to switch consoles from PlayStation to Xbox because of Call of Duty and the power it holds. And they cited facts, by the way, such as Vanguard, one of the poorest releases for a Call of Duty title. I say poor in air quotes because it was still the #1 selling game last year. And that was a big part of their point, is we can't hope to build anything bigger than that. Not my words, literally theirs. Throwing their own first-party development teams under the bus, throwing Killzone, Resistance under the bus, anything they could build under the bus. Their acquisition of Bungie with Destiny 2 under the bus, saying nothing can be as big as COD. That's why this can't go through. I thought there is some truth to that, but mostly I feel like Sony sounded scared, which I get as an Xbox channel. It sounds like, oh, fanboy, cut the shit. I don't care. I really don't. It's one of those things where my switch is completely flipped on that. If people are going to mock me and be ridiculous about it, I'm going to get a little more liberal with the mute button. That's just what's going to have to happen now, because the issue with this story and why I thought about not getting into it is literally people take this, I'd say, way too seriously in the scheme of things, because my God, has it gotten toxic. So I got to start looking into moderating things a little bit tighter than I usually do, because I'm normally like, okay, if you have something critical to say, sound off. Not my business. But anyway, to our next step now. This is the article we're going to be taking a look at. This comes from Video Games Chronicles, one of my favorite outlets. It's titled, Microsoft Refutes Sony's Claim That Its Activision Acquisition is Anti-Competitive. And again, the reason I'm doing the video in this style is because from top to bottom, as I was collecting my screenshots like I normally do for the videos, I was like, I'm just going to be reading this whole article because it gets all of the facts in place, in order. Everything I want to talk about is right there. So let's just look at the article together. So let's scroll down. This is where the 27-page report begins. It says, in the report transcribed by VGC, Microsoft notes that while numerous third parties, including Ubisoft and Bandai, gave responses to Cade, Sony was the only company that claimed Call of Duty was in a genre of its own with no competition. Yes, at this time, with these official opinions here, what they were effectively saying, Ubisoft and Bandai, is, you know, we have nothing really that's in that vertical. So it's not a threat to us that Xbox is getting that. Only one third-party applicant, Sony, presented materially different opinions than the applicants and the other third parties consulted by the SG, Microsoft claims. Sony is isolated in this understanding and curiously even contradicts itself in its responses to the letter, as will be detailed below. And I'm like, okay, that's really starting off like we're throwing shots. Microsoft goes on to state that Sony doesn't want to see Call of Duty games on Game Pass day one because it is resentful of having to compete with Microsoft's subscription service. Sony's public statements on subscription games and its response to the SG's letter are clear. The response reads, Sony does not want attractive subscription services to threaten its dominance in the digital distribution market for console games. Let's pause right there. Sony just launched PlayStation Plus, the overhauled version of it, and I and many others are of the mindset that never would have happened if Game Pass did not grow as quickly as it did. It did not present a clear and present danger to the way Sony tries to sell their games. Let's be very honest with ourselves. I feel Sony's starting to step into Nintendo territory a bit with the premium tax, if you will. Like in this example, between Xbox and PlayStation, Xbox, you'll be able to get all of their first-party games with day one Game Pass. But the claim, according to a lot of fans, is the reason you pay for a PlayStation game is you can only find that quality there. And it's the same thing I talked about, funny enough, in yesterday's collecting video about where the industry is with Nintendo games, where Nintendo games just have this absurd tax because it's a level of quality and scarcity. Meanwhile, Pokemon games, which were printed to shit, are worth hundreds of dollars now, even though everyone and their mother had a copy. It makes no sense. It's an artificial scarcity. It's an artificial price hike that makes no sense based off the supply. Same thing here, where I think Xbox can make the same quality of games as PlayStation, and that once things like Starfield, Forza Motorsport, maybe even Redfall start to come out, it's going to be really hard to argue that PlayStation should be able to charge $70. So I think what Microsoft is saying here is fair, because they are presenting a new monetization model, as I'll read in a sec, that does challenge what Sony does and will put them very shortly in an uncomfortable position where fans will say, well, we can pay for this, but why can't we get this stuff, say, day one in PS Plus? And that is a scary path to go down for the industry, changing how games are purchased, how they are accessed, because I think it will inherently change how they're designed. So it's a very attractive road to go down because games will be more affordable, and I'm all about that. You know how I feel about like cutting out the review process, getting the game in your hands as easily as possible, as cheap as possible. I think that's great, but there could be something missed out on in a game's core design if everything's being made for a subscription service. With that, let's continue reading. In other words, Sony rails against the introduction of new monetization models capable of challenging its business models, I had just said. Microsoft also denies Sony's claim that Call of Duty is a category of games in itself, despite the fact that it has a loyal following. Stating that Call of Duty has a loyal following is a premise which does not follow from the conclusion that the game is a gaming category per se, Microsoft claims. Sony's own PlayStation, incidentally, has an established base of loyal brand players. Such a finding, however, does not lead to the conclusion that PlayStation or any branded product with loyal consumers is a separate market from other consoles. Extrapolating from such a finding to the extreme conclusion that Call of Duty is a category of games per se is simply unjustifiable under any quantitative or qualitative analysis. This is where I don't agree with Microsoft here. Pretending that Call of Duty is not a beast unto itself is completely lying through your teeth. There's a reason why, again, Vanguard, a game that was blatantly broken, blatantly glitchy, was inferior to other Call of Duty games, and I know it doesn't matter to a lot of you, but its story presented nothing interesting compared to prior years. It wasn't ambitious in any way, shape, or form, and despite many games having multi-year marketing campaigns, many games trying to build up to a big moment, I think of something like Halo Infinite, something like Battlefield, right? They're like out and about for a while, being talked about. There's a lot of hype, and I know each of those games, those examples rather, were games that had pretty bad post-launch experiences, but Call of Duty managed to muscle its way all the way to the top as the #1 selling game of 2021, despite everything it had to fight through with other games in a very competitive holiday window with a lot of FPS options, and it still was presenting an inferior product, and they still came out on top. So there's no denying Call of Duty is a powerful thing. Xbox 100% knows that. That's why they're paying for it. And PlayStation knows that. That's why they did pay for it. There was a time period, and again, I used this example in my previous video. I'll use it again. See right here. Yeah, they put pretty much saying that Modern Warfare was a console exclusive to PlayStation 4 Pro, even though it wasn't, but they were acting like it was because there's a lot of sway with Call of Duty. When people see that, sometimes that's all they need to pull the trigger, and PlayStation knows that because they've experienced the boons of that partnership for years, and prior to that, Xbox knows what it does because they were tight with Call of Duty and Activision for many years. Remember, Call of Duty DLC used to come exclusively to Xbox 360 before anywhere else. It was a good month or so as well. Continuing on, it also lists 5 reasons arguing against Sony's claim that the addition of Activision Blizzard games to Game Pass would lead to an unattainable lead in subscription services for Microsoft. According to Microsoft, this claim is wrong because it's not part of Microsoft's strategy to remove content from players, and Call of Duty will still be on PlayStation as a paid title. Data shows that players see subscription services as only one way to pay for games. That's because I think there's only one option, by the way, out there that's, I think, really good. Sony's claim ignores the dynamic nature of subscription services and the fact that Sony has its own too. There is redacted information all over this document, by the way, so it's possible that Microsoft says here, PlayStation's making a new Killzone and a new Resistance. That's my speculation, by the way, not like a leak or anything, not a source, but they could be saying right here, like, they have other FPS games in development, or they have Bungie who's working on this FPS game. So why does it matter that we have Call of Duty? Which I do think could be potentially fair, but we don't know what's being said here. Then the 5th one, there are numerous other game distribution channels and subscription services, many of which include content that isn't available on Xbox. Now, I want to go over this in a moment, but what I really want to get into here is perhaps the spiciest part of the article, the spiciest claim that has shown up, something that we've speculated about, but we have not had any confirmation with. Microsoft saying so does suggest that this has happened and they are aware it has happened, and it does change the battleground quite a bit. Microsoft also claims that arranging exclusivity deals has been at the heart of Sony's strategy to strengthen its position in the games industry, and that as well as having its own first-party exclusives, it also has exclusive deals with third-party publishers. We know that. We've seen that in action forever. That's PlayStation's strategy for generations. It also alleges that Sony actively tries to hamper Game Pass's growth by paying some developers for blocking rights in return for them agreeing not to add their content to Game Pass. This was something that we talked about that may have been fake with Resident Evil, and this was something that we've definitely talked about extensively with a more relevant title nowadays, which is Final Fantasy VII Remake. So seeing Microsoft make this claim is a really, really big deal. We still have a little bit more to go through down here, but I really wanted to focus on this stretch here. Starting off with number 1, they say it's not a part of their strategy to remove content from players, and Call of Duty will still be available as a paid title. Again, got to call Microsoft out here. They're doing what they need to make this deal look fair. But the reality is that a lot of players are going to see, oh, I can pay $15 a month and not only get Call of Duty, but hundreds of other games coming out soon, coming out in the future that are available now, and I can save money on COD every year, a game I care about a lot. Okay, sure. Or I can try COD out for a month and cancel my subscription service. Okay, I'm going to go get an Xbox. So I'm not going to pretend that, again, there isn't sway here with Call of Duty or just Activision in general. I think we're always talking about Call of Duty. We're getting, like, Overwatch 2 is a big deal, having that, not exclusively, but having that in the Xbox ecosystem. Diablo 4 is another big deal. I mean, have we not seen how much money Diablo Immortal, despite how, I think, ridiculous that game is, has generated for Activision Blizzard? So, yeah, they're definitely going to be rolling in the dough with a lot of Activision games. Just Call of Duty is the biggest one. Data shows that players see subscription services as only one way to pay for games. This is true. This is true. Again, I think that the offset of it is that we don't have many other good subscription service offerings that provide day one games available on Game Pass. If that starts to become a common thing, then other players would likely opt for the subscription service over just buying and owning stuff. But it could be cheaper if you're not playing a lot of games to just buy and own as you see fit. But regardless of this, data does suggest that, according to Xbox, they have shown the stats that if you were to be a Game Pass subscriber, you spend more money on games. So people who are Game Pass subs are still buying games and buying games that are within Game Pass because people like to own their stuff. It's just that simple. So what they're saying here is true. Sony claims ignore the dynamic nature of subscription services and the fact that Sony has its own too. True. Absolutely true. But PlayStation subscription service is wildly different from Xbox's in a lot of ways. Particularly, I think the value offering of Game Pass is stronger, and I think PlayStation has yet to, indulge in any day one offerings whatsoever. I still like PS Plus and what it's offering, but I think, this is one of those things where it's true and false. We don't know what the redacted information is, and again, they say there are numerous other distribution channels and subscription services, many of which include content that isn't available on Xbox. Again, this is true, but Xbox does offer something very particular that is very alluring. There's a reason why there's 25 plus million subscribers for it, because people are getting brand new games day one. Xbox has announced a couple this week that look really awesome. Soccer Story. There's this other, it looks like a Bloodborne style game, Souls-like game. So they continue to pump value into the service. It's hard to say that I think many other services stack up against it pretty well. But again, the most interesting part of it all is Xbox calling out PlayStation on what's going on with their exclusivity deals, and certainly saying that Game Pass growth is being hampered by blocking rights, that PlayStation is paying developers saying you can't bring this game to Game Pass. That to me is fascinating, because it's something that we've all speculated about, because it would make sense given I look at something like Final Fantasy, because I think that's our best example, but not just 7. I look at something like Final Fantasy 14, which would 100% would benefit from being on Xbox. I know people think that's crazy, but that is a booming MMO. To bring more players into that would be fantastic. It already has a working console version. It is arguably the most popular and profitable MMO on the market. It has kept Square Enix up for years, as they have had cratering losses like Marvel Avengers, for an example. And they have now sold off their Western division. They reportedly are looking to maybe sell to PlayStation, which would make a lot of sense. But they're claiming, they being the Final Fantasy 14 team, that they don't have the tools and the resources to make an Xbox version for Final Fantasy 14. And I'm like, y'all are raking in the dough. What do you mean? So this could be one of those examples where, yes, Sony is blocking off developers from doing certain things that they otherwise would do. That's business. But I think the Game Pass part of things, that vertical, is really, really interesting, because I would love to see if there's any actual tangible documents out there beyond what people were claiming was a leak for Resident Evil 7 and 8 never going to Game Pass, and what Xbox knows has been blocked off that maybe we're not all privy to. Because for them to put this, you can't just put speculation inside a legal document, right? We have to remember, these are two giant corporations submitting paperwork to a regulatory body. And they are not going to say, like any of us would on a YouTube channel or a comment or a tweet. Like, I think they might be doing this. They are making this claim because they seem to think they have something on PlayStation that proves this is the case. And to me, that is something I want to know more about. That is a really big deal, but this is what I'm talking about with like real life console wars. I mean, this is stuff that you see in the vitriol between fans of both communities, because heaven forbid we just enjoy all consoles. We're seeing that vitriol grow, and it's starting to carry into the corporate speak. It's something I've called PlayStation out for in the past, where they've used like console fanboy terms and weaponize them a bit by using them in their own interviews, and it then in turn justifies what the fanboys are saying. And I'm like, we can't be doing this. We can't be arming fanboys with comments that are not sensible and are destructive to the conversation, and making things worse, and making gaming an unattractive hobby to participate in because everyone's lining up to protect their favorite console manufacturer. At the bottom here, finally, in perhaps the strongest indication yet, Call of Duty will remain multi-platform. Microsoft claims not having Call of Duty games on PlayStation wouldn't make business sense, because it would only be profitable if enough people jumped over to Xbox to make up for the money lost from not selling PlayStation copies. This is something that they've been saying for a while. I remember when the speculation was going really wild on will Call of Duty be exclusive. This was sort of the back and forth. Do they go exclusive and just try to yank people off platforms and come on over? Or do they make the money off of copies sold on PlayStation, which will be hundreds of thousands, millions, possibly? And I think they were wise to do this route. Although, again, I'll call myself out. I was speculating they'd go exclusive because they were locking down other franchises. I was like, what's Call of Duty to them? at that point. They've already set the precedent with something like Bethesda Game Studios. But again, it makes this guessing game of what will be exclusive and not exclusive, like a new Fallout game, a new, I don't know, Doom game. What are those going to look like? Because apparently Elder Scrolls 6 will be exclusive. So that's a whole other conversation, but just a fascinating read from top to bottom here. Great work by VGC, and I'm sure this story will continue to develop. I'll be tracking it closely and covering it, but for now, that's all we've got. So let me know what you think about, yes, real-life console wars in the comments down below. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.